Dr. Pinky Patel, the CEO and founder of Myri Health, and we love doing these mom to mom series. And it didn't make sense to have this without bringing in the CEO and the founder of Solid Starts. I have Jenny with me, and I'm going to let her introduce herself, and we're going to talk about all the things motherhood and kind of the inspiration behind what we've been building and where we're trying to go. But Jenny, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you. It's been a long time.
Has been a long time. Uh,
So I'm Jenny Best. I'm the founder of Solid Starts, which is the largest platform for how to introduce real food to your baby. Our sort of simple story is that when I was first introducing solids to my firstborn, this was 8 years ago. I did the sort of traditional like Gerber jar or whatever pouch you did at the time, and he really didn't like it. He didn't want me putting the spoon in his mouth. He'd kind of turn his head away, and I didn't know of any other alternative. And unfortunately, that spiraled down really quickly into a lot of food refusal, and then later, quite severe picky eating because the more anxious I got about him not eating, the more I tried to get him to eat. And the more I tried, the more he wanted to, back off. And we kind of down we went. So I wanted to introduce a platform. We have a free food database and an app that you can use to look up any food to see how to introduce it to your baby. Um, and now we're a full-fledged team of doctors, pediatricians, allergists, dietitians, feeding therapists, lactation consultants, you name it, a full multidisciplinary approach. And we offer guides and courses and services for starting solids, toddlers at the table, which is a whole new animal, and of course, picky eating as well. But thank you for having me. It's really good to see you.
I know it's been a long time. We've been trying to coordinate this chat for a while now, but Jenny and I met. A little background story. I learned about her page myself because when I had my little ones, this was, during the pandemic is when I learned about Solid Starts because we were all at home and trying to feed our children, not interacting much with the outside world. And we connected through social media and Instagram. And that's when we had connected originally. And there was a time where I think my kiddo was only 4 months old, and so we're right in that like baby led weaning stage. And you have three of your own. I know you talked
Yes,
about
I do.
how old are they?
Well, now they're 8 and 5, 5-year-old twins, but
Oh,
when we
that's
met, I think, yeah, they were like I mean, I started the account when the twins were babies, so it may be even longer ago that we first met, but yeah, it's been a while.
yeah. When I think your page was truly like a baby, and I remember finding it, and I was like, "This is going places," because so many people run into the same issues of there's conflicting information on the internet, which is how I landed on your page because it was so easy to digest, and so much anxiety is just involved with being a mother. And the one thing that caused the most anxiety beyond breastfeeding, right, for me, because breastfeeding was very difficult, but it was feeding the baby because you're like, oh, it's time to
Yeah,
feed you. And so it's like, what's the choking hazards and the way to cut the food. And I didn't like the idea of just feeding them with a spoon. And then there was so much
yeah,
science involved that you
yeah,
start researching. And I'm like, they should touch textures. They should like be able to eat some of this themselves.
yes,
Um,
yeah.
thank you for the work that you're doing because I remember at that time, I was just so glad to find your page. But let's talk a little bit about, let's not go back to those days. 'Cause I remember those, when I reference that COVID time as being so dark, because I remember looking at you like we were doing like a live, and this room didn't even have a table in it. Like I remember I was like sitting in a chair and we did a live, and there was like a tripod sitting right here, and both of us were just like extremely exhausted, which I think the entire mom population was. But then we also had to figure out how to feed our kids. So that is so exciting that you have ebooks or books now and downloadables and an app. The app is being used globally, right? Am I correct?
Every single country in the world, actually, and we're told it's in the top, I think in the top 5% of all apps in the world at this point. So it's definitely a global population using it. And one of the things I wanted to do with this free food database where you can look up any food and see how to cut it for your baby, see if it's a choking hazard or an allergen, all that kind of critical information was I wanted people in any country, any food culture to be able to easily and freely access information on how to introduce their food to their baby, not the Western baby, jar food or the pouch from the United States. But, if you're in Nigeria, the fufu is fine. It's safe for your baby. There's, I think, been one of the sort of unintended consequences of the convenience food in the baby food industry and the spread of that globally is that it has made it seem as if local food cultures are not safe for babies. And there's always some precautions that you need to take. No honey, choking hazards and things like that. But by and large, almost any food can be made to be safe for a 6-month old as long as you cook it in a certain way and modify it so that it's no longer a choking hazard. And that's what I'm really trying to do is undo a bit of that history and make it possible for anyone to find food that's relevant for their food culture and make it safe for their baby. The gap between that jar of baby food or that pouch and the family meal is really big. And there's not a logical connection, right? Like, I think that companies like Gerber decades ago tried to make that connection by stage one food, stage two, stage three, and so forth, with graduated thicknesses of purees or chunky mashes and things like that. But that's not actually how babies really learn to eat. And in fact, purees are sucked to swallow; they're not chewed. And so it doesn't. And even a lumpy mash delivered on the spoon on the tongue will be sucked to swallow. It won't be chewed. It doesn't trigger the chewing reflexes. So as I started researching this and talking to experts and licensed professionals in this arena, my mind was just blown because I'm like, well, we've all been told it has to be this way, that you have to do this, and then you do stage two, and then you eventually get over here. But that leap to the family meal is not an easy one. And more often than not, we see a lot of families struggle with transitioning from purees to the family meal. And that sort of, oh, it's too spicy for my baby, or it's too, you can't have garlic in it, or things like that. It's actually not true. Babies can eat food just like we do, but we do need to modify it to make it safe. And, where there's intense spice, we kind of like ease them in. But the notion that babies, are too immature for real food, or that their digestive systems can't handle it, um, sort of fallacies and old tales that really didn't have any evidence behind them. So we're trying to bring an evidence-based approach to it, but also invite people into looking inward to their own food culture again. Like, oh yeah, actually, grandma's lasagna recipe is totally safe for my 6-month old. Let's do it. But making that leap, I know, is scary for some parents. So we're trying to help them decrease the anxiety, build the confidence, give them the information they need so that that leap from textureless food to quote unquote real food or the family meal is less stressful.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. My background, my parents are from India, and so it's not like they had pouches there. Like my grandparents would joke, they're like, we didn't have all this fancy stuff, the pouch and we just fed them whatever we fed them, and it's like they didn't have a guide then. But I think now in this culture, we want to be safe, we want evidence-based things. There's so much information out there, which is great, but not all of it is evidence-based and not all of it is credible. And so I
Mhm.
just love the
And it's
platform.
overwhelming. I think that's where I really relate with or empathize with this the current generation of first time parents and first time moms is that you're growing up in an age where algorithms are pushing information to you, marketing machines are trying to sell you things. And
Yeah.
it's just whether you are looking for that information or not, it is coming at you in so many different directions. And I think it can be really daunting and confusing. So,
It's
yeah, we have more information than we've ever had before, yet it's led to more anxiety, I think, than we've ever had before around this. So,
frustrating.
um,
And
it's a tricky time.
It is, and social media is great. That's how we learned about one another. But social
Yeah.
media also does a disservice because marketing campaigns are rampant sometimes. I feel that way when it comes to fitness, right? There's so much information available, but not all of it is the best. And
And
it,
comparison, right? Like, "Oh, that person's house or this person's baby's eating better than mine," or all of that, and
you're like
it
looking
just
at
makes
stories and
the
you're like,
vets overwhelm and anxiety, for sure.
they're like, "What are you feeding yours?" And, like, if you're on the internet in any capacity, if you're a micro, macro influencer, people are asking you questions, right? But where are
Yeah,
you getting that information, and where are they getting that information? So,
yeah.
I just love the platform that you've built, and I feel when you talk about being overwhelmed, I feel like it starts with preconception. Like,
Oh, totally.
I work with women I've worked with thousands of women in preconception and pregnancy, and it's like, what prenatal do I take? What do I eat? What do I not eat? It all kind of starts there. And then
Well,
once
and the
you're
whole medical, like, is your baby tracking along at every single weight and measurement? And I think that worry about, one of the biggest worries we find with parents of 6-month-olds starting solids is that stress of, going from bottle to solids and that transition of weaning. That huge fear is baby going to eat enough? Can I trust my baby to eat enough? How do I know when they're full? That kind of thing. And I think a lot of that anxiety really is rooted in those initial doctor appointments in pregnancy. And I think that it seems like our job as parents is to make sure that our baby grows and gains weight, like full stop, right? Like if you do nothing else, that's your job. First thing they talk about at a doctor's appointment, they measure the baby, they weigh the baby, and it's never like, how are you guys
doing
doing?
it, it's like,
And the
here's your
reality is,
number.
is that the vast majority of babies, including those who are self-feeding from day one of starting solids, eat exactly what their unique body needs for their unique growth curve. But we don't yet trust that, I think, as parents, in part because of the system that we're entering into of constant weight checks and growth checks and things like that. So, we're adding to the information landscape with evidence-backed, doctor-approved information, but at the same time, my sincere hope with it all is that it helps give people more confidence so that they feel more free in the process of starting solids and less afraid. And maybe we can take some more steps back and say, actually, I'm going to follow my gut on this because it's probably
Oh,
pretty.
the gut part is something that but until I became a mother, or sorry, pregnant, I didn't lean into it as much. But now more than ever, beyond even parenting, I lean on that gut because it even started from the labor and delivery room from when, I have a whole entire story where, there was a physician that lied to me about my baby being in distress to try to get me into the OR and
Mm,
have a C-section. I was
mm,
at hour 58 of unmedicated labor of 60 hours,
oh
and I leaned into
gosh.
my gut and I walked in and I was like, "This baby is actually fine, and I actually just heard you lie about this." And
Mhm.
I had to get into a full fight because I was like, "This is not what we're doing right now." And
Yeah.
I really felt like that kicked off the gut, and
That
so I'm
mom gut is so
strong,
strong. It's
so
almost
strong.
always right. Whether it's like, I'm sensing something's not right here, or I'm sensing it's gonna be okay. I just feel like, yes, we can trust our guts a little bit more. And I think the trick with feeding is when your gut could get in the way because maybe you've over-researched it, or maybe you're having, postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression or other sort of influences on how you might be feeling or thinking. We've noticed that solids can really be both a game changer for postpartum anxiety, but also an additive stress. And it's interesting to see how different parents navigate that. Some parents write these beautiful letters to us, the you made this joyful, and I found myself again. I found myself in the kitchen again. I found myself enjoying meals again and taking care of myself better again, not just thinking about, okay, what baby puree am I going to make for baby, but what am I going to cook for
Because
us?
it's an added element. So you
Yeah,
don't like, "Oh,
yeah,
dinner table." In my family, we all don't like, some of us eat fish, some of us, like, don't I
yeah,
don't eat chicken, so it's like there's already this whole, like, thing that we have to do. And then it's like, oh,
Mhm.
another thing. And I don't want another thing. You want to be able
Yeah,
to
exactly.
my child.
The sooner that we as parents, and I think particularly, moms and especially, solo moms, the sooner we can fold baby into our meal,
Yeah.
the easier and more in harmony life will feel like, because you're not feeling like this burden of having to do this meal or 6, 3 snacks a day or 2 snacks a day and 3 meals a
Right.
day for that other person, then and then you're the afterthought, right? Okay, we'll just eat
Yeah.
whatever's leftover or order something or, whatever it might be. But the sooner you can kind of think about it holistically as a unit, like, what are we going to share today? And start with yourself. This is one thing
I
that
never did
it's
that.
like
I never started with myself.
rewiring our brains. Like, it is okay to start solids with a path where you start with what you want to eat and you share a little bit of that with baby. And then you can look up in our app whether it's safe or, how you might cut your omelet and share a little bit of that with baby. That's my hope for this next generation of parents, is that they start with their, what do I want to eat and how can I share that with the rest of my family, versus this like almost 1950s parent who is um, putting everyone else in the family before themselves, and the duty is to serve, right? I think that we can
Well,
go
that's
back
kind of how
and,
we were
put
raised.
ourselves in priority and start there. And what's really beautiful about that is that when the baby is sort of participating in the family meal, whether that's a family unit of a single parent versus a large family, the earlier the baby is folded into the family meal, eating the foods that you are eating yourself, the less risk you have of picky eating
Yeah,
later
for
on.
sure.
And that's really well
Nobody
established.
wants a picky eater. No, but then
It's so hard.
it's everybody's hope that I mean, I don't think any mother says, "Oh, I would love for my child just to eat this." Like, that's your hope as a mother, is that they're healthy, they eat things that make your family life, dynamic a little easier in the evenings. Because as they get older, you and I both
Yeah,
know we have older kiddos now, they have activities, and they have a lot of things that you'd like to just feed them all at once, and we all eat together, and the one thing that you talked about, postpartum anxiety, I had it for 2 years with my first. I didn't even know I had it. And you know what
mm,
added to that anxiety was the fact that I was constantly stressed about providing nutritious food, safe food,
yeah,
actually lost weight, not intended, both times. I mean,
yeah,
even being as a fitness professional, yeah, that's not wasn't my goal, but why did
right.
I lose weight? I wasn't prioritizing my meals because I was just trying to cater to what the baby.
Everything else comes first and you come last, right? Like, that's how we've been doing it, I feel
People are
like.
worried about gaining weight or losing their weight. I wasn't worried about that. I was so freaking stressed out that it was anxiety that was, and when your body is anxious, you actually burn a lot of calories, right?
Yeah,
And so I
yeah,
lived that experience, and so I think that what you're doing is wonderful. Let's talk a little bit about your first baby is the one that kind of inspired this, right?
yeah,
In terms
yeah.
of like, the anxiety that you kind of experienced. How was that postpartum experience like? Because there was, Myri was built off of the lessons that I've learned, the gaps that I'd seen, and the issues that I've had. And it's like, how was that experience before you started feeding the baby, right? With you.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like many first-time parents, I was very hyper-focused on nutrition. I remember blending my own purees, was like kale and something something. I was really dead set on introducing, green vegetables super early, and really afraid, intensely afraid of choking, but also really afraid of mess and just my life changing so much because of, the baby coming in is like, no, we're going to be that house that has clean carpets and no food on the walls and no crushed Cheerios in the couch. And I wanted to hang on to my old life as it was before, which is honestly not really possible, right? When we, in hindsight, look back, you're going to have crushed Cheerios in your couch. Like, it's going to happen whether you like it or not. But when you put together the fear of choking, the real hesitation around letting baby touch food because it might be messy or make a mess, and the, hyper intense focus on nutrition and making sure that gets into baby, those three things tend to lead to exclusive, prolonged, and very controlled spoon feeding. And what does that lead to? That often leads to picky eating. The longer your child is only eating, exclusively eating one textureless food, like, or, the completely textureless food, like I would say, like in a pouch or puree, where there's a machine that's blending that into a completely velvety consistency. The further away they are getting from chewable food, weak jaws, all of the oral motor skills needed to move food around, to chew and to break it down and to move it back to swallow. Um, these are all foundational skills of eating. And the longer we're on those pouches and purees, it's fine to start with them. If that's where you are because of your anxiety around choking or nutrition or weight gain, or whatever, it's fine. But we need to quickly move that and take that leap to chewable food around 8 to 9 months is sort of the optimal window. Between 6 and 8 months, six to 8 and 9 months, but ideally our feeding therapist would say 8 months. Between 6 and 9 months, there is a beautiful window where the brain and the baby's body learns to chew more easily than they would later on. So I think often parents think, oh, well, I'll wait till around 11 or 12 months of age to do the chewable food or the finger food because that's when they'll be more mature and more ready for that. But it's actually not the case. The younger babies, 6 to 8 months of age, actually pick up the skill more quickly. Similar to straw drinking as well, because that suck reflex is still, or that dominant pattern of sucking is still in play. So teaching them to drink from a straw early on is actually really smart because that sucking pattern fades with age. And so, I waited forever to introduce a straw cup to my firstborn because I didn't know what I was doing at the time. And by like 18 months, he just didn't get it. It was really hard to teach. So, I try to get parents to not to see that kicking the can down the road, waiting for maturity or waiting for
Yeah.
baby to be ready for chewable food can actually backfire in the child. The older they get, the more hesitant they are about new foods. And so then you've got that factoring in as well. But personally, for me, look, you're postpartum, it's your first child, you want to do it all right.
Right.
And all of that to me, it led to a lot of unintended consequences that we are still dealing with today, actually, even 8 years later. But
Yeah.
we had a very, I would say, um I don't know what the right word is, but an extreme case. I spoon fed my firstborn until he was almost 2 years old. He was on textureless food until he was almost two because I was that afraid of choking. My anxiety was that high. I was that, worried about mess and all of that. And I just didn't know. I didn't have any resources available to me. And honestly, I think I got a half-page tear out from our pediatrician that said, "Start with 4 tablespoons of rice cereal and, whatever fruits and this and
Oh,
that."
I
And it's
know that tear out because
that's
it's
all I got,
awful.
and it was like, "You're on your own." There's these entire organizations dedicated to making sure you breastfeed or do formula right and all this support there, but at the time, there was not, really any support for, how to raise a happy eater, a child who likes to eat, who wants to explore food, and how to advance the skills of safe eating. Our feeding therapists will always tell you they are not worried about a 6-month-old with a huge piece of steak. They are worried about like an 18-month-old who hasn't had enough exposure to chewable food, then taking a small cube of steak and not chewing it and then just trying to swallow it. So there's a lot of undoing of assumptions and knowledge that we're trying to do at Solid Starts. And a lot of the past recommendations, even coming from the medical community, were not rooted in any kind of evidence. It was
And that
just
and that's the scary
what we had always done before.
yeah, and that's the scary part, honestly. There's a lot of things that we're doing at Myri that we're having to undo what was previously standard, right? Like leaving the hospital with your organs that reorganized, your body reorganized your organs to make space for a baby, and it makes 0 sense from an anatomical perspective to do nothing and then have an arbitrary appointment at 6 weeks
6 weeks later, right?
to be cleared for all movement patterns, right? And no one's looked inside under the hood. And when I say under the hood, that little muscle that held all your organs in the uterus, like what
Mhm.
happened to that? And so
Yeah.
that's where I had a lot of questions medically as well as like, wait, you didn't even know how I labored. You don't even know how I tore. Like, how do you fundamentally think that I'm ready for Orange Theory sprints, next
Right, right,
literally everything could be falling out. And so
right,
I think
right.
I think both of the solutions that we're bringing to the table have questioned a lot of what was done in the past, and I think that is
Yes,
so important because we've lived the experience of the
yes.
anxiety.
And you know what, Pinky? I will say that for all the downsides of social media, which there are many,
Yeah.
the one thing that I've seen in the last 3 years in particular is that it platforms like Instagram gave, um, moms, particularly stay-at-home moms, a way to easily communicate to the masses in a way that they hadn't done before, and so we're seeing all of these startups, around parenting and motherhood and, postpartum support and breastfeeding or, even formula, whatever, led by moms like you and I. And I think that that to me is one of the best things that has come out of all of this is that it gave us an easy way to question the information, gather a lot of input from other communities and to create new resources where it would have taken the American Academy of Pediatrics, 10 years to overhaul a certain path or protocol. So that's one thing I'm seeing as a benefit of all of this is that for better or for worse, it's too much information for sure, but it's at least there now where it wasn't there before. I don't know if today's first time mom will ever really understand what it was like when there's like, well, there actually isn't information about this thing and I don't know what to do other than ask, my own parent, but I kind of want to do it differently than she did. And but
Between
a new
parent
world that we're in.
Between your parent and your medical community, because with the appointments, that's all you really had, right? And then you open up this little app, the little square on your phone, and you're instantly transported into people who look like you. They're experiencing the same problems as you are. When I started posting on Instagram 10 years ago, it was all about fitness, and then it evolved. Even before there were no stories, it was just a picture. And so
Yeah.
post a picture of myself in a rocking chair and talk about the realities of what I was going through, and then I felt less alone. That's how it started. I felt kind of, and I as a healthcare professional myself, I struggled a little bit in the beginning because I was like, wait, everything I know is about healthcare. Like I love my healthcare professionals. They're great people. They are great people. But just because things are done a certain way doesn't mean that they should be done that way. Like you said, the American Academy of Pediatrics would have taken them forever to catch up with some of these things. And I
Yeah.
think that one sheet of paper that I used to come home with, I'm like, that growth chart all goes back to that. I would go to the doctor's office and I would just be like, "Please tell me she's growing. Please tell me she's growing." So
Yeah.
much pressure. And then
Yeah.
I'm like, "Am I producing enough milk or do I need a supplement?" And I remember feeling like
Mhm.
it was like I got my kind of gold star, when you go to school and you get your gold star. And then I was like, wait, so you just measured the kid, you gave me a paper that was like this percentile, kind of felt like I was taking a test. Um,
Yeah.
and the worst thing for like an over ambitious OCD student, like to get a
Right.
this is your record. And then on the back of it, it was like, now you should start feeding 4 tablespoons of whatever.
Right,
And
and just when you nailed the breastfeeding or the formula bottle feeding or pumping or whatever you're doing, it's like, "We're gonna upend that, we're gonna mess with your nap schedule, now we're gonna put meals in there. Oh, by the way, you have to start cooking for everybody."
correct. And also, oh, they're gonna get teeth. So whatever sleep schedule you have, it's out the door. And
Yeah, yeah.
you're like, what? And so when you get to that 12 months, you're like, I made it. Like this birthday party is not for me. It's not for the bird baby. This birthday
Yeah,
party for me. Um,
Yeah.
but it doesn't even end there because it's also like, "Oh, there's more food. Oh,
It's
there's
true,
more."
it just keeps going. That's the unfortunate part, like, all the new parents, just close your ears right now, just operate in the month you're in, get through that month, but yeah, it's just
And
one of my, sort of veteran, uh, family members who has, 4 children, she always says, "The it doesn't get easier, the hard just gets different," and I think that's really right,
the
but
heart does get different, and I think
yeah.
it's just different stages, but I think the one thing that I do want to kind of end with is that we don't give ourselves enough grace because no matter what you do, there's always going to be something else that you go, "Oh, I should have done that," or "Should have
Yeah.
bought these Montessori toys," or "I should have" it stimulated their brain in this capacity because even when I was feeding her, I was like, "Oh, is this gonna increase her cognitive development?" It never ends, but thank you so much
But you
for.
know what? The majority of kids are alright. They turn out alright. And I
Yeah,
think it takes, having, more than one child and going through that path to really look back and see that, but, um, yeah,
I
just trust
agree.
your trust your gut and
The
know
gut.
that it's likely gonna be okay.
Yeah, and the gut is I think we started with that, and I wanna end with that, is that, leaning into your mom gut and just doing the best you can is enough, but having these resources like yours, I don't think the new mom that has the baby that goes home and hears about solid starts doesn't know how hard it was for the moms before, so,
I think about this sometimes.
like, you just don't know, you don't know, but thank you
A
so
lot went into it,
for
yeah.
spending some time with me. I know it's been a while since we've caught up and,
Yeah.
we've evolved as businesses and as moms. Our kids are older now, different
Yeah.
hearts, if you will. But really grateful for everything that you're doing. If our followers want to find more of Solid Starts, I know you guys are doing so many things. You're available on a lot of platforms, but I'll let you kind of just remind us where we can find you.
Yeah, solidstarts.com has everything you need. You can sign up for the app there. You can access the free food database on the website there. You can access resources on starting solids or cranky toddlers refusing food or real full on, blown out picky eating. It's all there for you. But yeah, solidstarts.com is the place, and the majority of the information is free. So have at it and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Jenny.
Thank you. It was really nice to see you.